Hello, welcome back to Quartzlight, your car brochure channel. Yes, it's Ford Friday, which means we're going to be looking at the Ford, and indeed we're continuing on our Australia series, looking at the Ford Falcon. Welcome back, and if you're new to Quartzlight is really a car brochure channel here on YouTube, looking at car brochures from around the world, specifically for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, although we do go outside that realm occasionally as well. So if you're new to the channel and enjoyed the episodes, please do consider liking and subscribing. Anyway, back to today's episode. It's Friday. We call it Ford Friday because we look at a different Ford every Friday. Today, or in fact the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at Australian Fords, the Ford Escort, comparing that to the UK Ford Escort, and similarly with the Cortina, comparing the Australian Ford Cortina with the UK Ford Cortina. We're seeing quite a few little differences, tend to be mainly due to the engine sizes, of course, but other little changes there as well. Now, I don't have a huge amount of knowledge of Australian cars. Thankfully, we've got a bit of an Australian audience who do comment, and I appreciate all them comments. Interesting information. Personally, like I say, I don't have a huge amount of knowledge of Australian cars. Mainly my knowledge is surrounding cars sold in the UK and Europe. So those comments really help. But overall, I find Australian cars extremely interesting. The Fords of the 70s, the Holdens of the 70s, I just think are particularly interesting cars, particularly when you look at the size of the engines and what amazing cars they would be. Now, like I say, we're continuing that story in Australia, slightly different because we come to the Australian Ford Falcon now, and really there isn't an equivalent UK version of this. Anyway, let's throw it up on the board and have a look what we're talking about. Okay, so I've just thrown the two brochures we've been looking at this series, the Australian Ford brochure for 78, the UK Ford brochure for 78. Ford Granada on the front cover of this UK brochure. Now the Australian brochure's got the Fairmont. That particular version will be a GXL version of the Fairmont. Now the Fairmont, really, we'll probably touch on the Fairmont as well, because I kind of feel the Fairmont is like a more luxury orientated version of the Falcon. Would that be a fair comment to make, Australian viewers? So we'll certainly probably touch on it, and it'll probably be kind of like interlinked with the section for the Falcon. Anyway, let's turn to both brochures and see what we would get in a similar sort of section there. So looking at the UK brochure, yeah, we looked at the Escort, we looked at the Cortina last week, and they're in the back catalogue in case you're missing, so you can still find those if you want to catch up with the previous episodes. So we looked at the UK Cortina. After the Cortina came the Capri, and in this case, in the UK, we would refer to this as a Mark II Ford Capri. I don't believe you got a Mark II Ford Capri in Australia. You got the Mark I early on in the 70s, but I don't think you actually received the Mark II, and of course, no Capri shown in the Australian version. Indeed, after the Ford Cortina in the Australian version, we do get the Falcon, with this little bit of a tagline, Ford Falcon, the great Australian road car, which I do believe was a bit of a sales catchphrase type slogan for the Falcon in the 70s. So yes, no Ford Capri, possibly because there didn't really seem to be a need for the Capri, maybe because, you know, you can certainly get your Falcon as a two-door sort of hardtop type version. So maybe that was filling that gap, although overall the Falcon is a much larger car. So I've just kind of like zoomed in on this particular version of a Falcon. This particular one would be the Ford Falcon 500 sedan. Round headlights at the front seems to be the way of the Falcon, where the Fairmont seems to have more of a rectangular shape headlight, which we'll certainly have a look at later on. I do believe these would have been referred to as the Falcon XC introduced in July 76. And we'll certainly see similar sorts of engines as we got in the Cortina, actually, surprisingly enough. And we can also see some of the interior details that we can see in the Australian version of the Cortina as well. Now, size-wise, yeah, it's a much bigger car than the Capri. In fact, if you look at the next generation, the XD version, at first glance, that just looks like a European Ford Granada, so think of it like a Ford Granada size. Although I think the XD was actually slightly larger than our European Ford Granadas. Maybe we should have a look at the XD at some point and compare it to the European Ford Granada, which incidentally would come after the Capri in the UK brochure. The XD arrived around about 79, I'm going to say. Looking at like the fuel crisis, it went for more. Well, it was trying to make a more fuel efficient cars, although before the XD arrived, they kind of like pitched the Cortina, the 6-cylinder Cortina, as to say that's the fuel efficient version, which obviously wasn't really. So I always think that's a little bit strange. Anyway, I'm waffling. I mustn't do too much waffling. We've got a lot to get through, so let's continue and open up the Ford Falcon and see what more there is to offer in this brochure. So the range appears to start here with the model simply known as the Ford Falcon sedan and wagon. You can get an estate or wagon, as we would call it in Australia, version, a bit more practical for sure. Let's start by zooming in on this red example. So it's certainly got very plain wheel trims. If you notice, them centre wheel trims look very plain, very basic, typical lower spec Ford fashion, although we can see this particular example looks like it's a 3.3 litre engine. Of course, it would be a 6-cylinder as well. So not too much in the way of fuel efficiency. But you will notice, as is typical with Fords at this time, again, colour coordinated door mirrors. We certainly didn't get those in the UK with any of our models at the time. But overall, a big car, aren't they? And a big car, considering there's a lot more Fords available at this time, which were even bigger. So fuel efficiency wasn't a huge concern at this time. Obviously, like I say, in the next models we started to think more about fuel efficiency. And then, like I say, at the back, the wagon version, which is going to be a very practical version for your typical family type Australian car at the time. Pretty basic, these models though. As we can see on the inside, big bench seat there. Although if you notice, head restraints. Now, a few people have told me in Australia, yes, head restraints were mandatory for quite some time by 78. And that was something that came much earlier than the UK for whatever reason, so well done, Australia. If I zoom in a little bit further, you can just about make out these armrests in the Falcon. Now, we noticed in the Cortina version what unusual armrests they were for a Cortina, obviously robbed from the Falcon, as were a few little bits and pieces. Text wise, I'm not going to read all the text because really there's a lot of information to get through in this video, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but kind of the line here: Ford Falcon sedan and wagons deliver the goods with comfort, performance and style. Then it starts introducing, because it's for business, it doesn't mean that a sedan or wagon can't be a pleasure to own and drive. Falcon sedans and wagons go a long way to satisfy the needs of man. 70s, no mention of women, of course, as well as the essential economic needs of the business. So we've got a cross-flow 6-cylinder engine. Apparently it delivers great performance. I'm sure it does, but these are bigger cars than the Cortina, of course. Economy, the 3.3 litre 6 does the job on money-saving standard fuel. And it tells us an auto transmission. I don't know really if they're convincing too many people that 3.3 litres were good for economy. I don't know. It's the 70s though, so I think you could tell people anything. It then goes on to give some of the details of this particular base model. Comes with a 3.3 litre 6-cylinder engine, 3-speed manual column shift transmission. Of course, you've got that option to go automatic as well. I'm not going to read it all out, but you can see it's got the basic things that you would need at the time. And of course, you know, if you wanted to, you could pause the screen to see all the features it had, but pretty basic, you know, vinyl seats, bench seats, you know, just what you needed in the 70s without going too much. You got the essentials. We've got a cigarette lighter, which, you know, essential equipment for the 70s, of course. And then when we turn the page, it takes us to this model. I really like this model, actually. It's the Ford Falcon 500. I particularly like it in this colour. Very 70s, isn't it? I think that would look really good in sort of the Australian light, but I really like this particular model. Let's just zoom in a little bit further. Unfortunately, it does, you know, fold onto a crease here. We can see extra little bits of treatment, more of like a full size wheel trim. Certainly won't be alloy wheels, but you know, a nicer wheel trim for sure. I don't know if you can make out the badge. 4.1 litre. 4.1 is going to be the same as what we got in the Cortina. A lot of people said, you know, in the Cortina it was an extremely fast car, but really it couldn't really handle the power. I would imagine the 4.1 probably works a lot better in the Falcon overall. And at the bottom here, another lovely shot of this particular Falcon 500. I don't know what it is about this one. I really like this Falcon 500 in this yellow colour. I think it looks really good. Maybe this might have been the model I would have gone for without going to like the crazy models. But you know, it's subtle, but you know, it's still got a 4.1 under there and looks really good, I think. We also get a nice little rear shot. Love the big chrome bumpers, actually. Very 70s. Zoom in a little bit further to see those quite unusual tail lights, but of course how it's badged the Falcon 500. And then we get to the text. One thing I did want to ask the Australian viewers about these Falcons, how did they last? I know the Cortina, which we would refer to as a Mark IV Cortina, the 70s Cortinas, how did they fare in Australia? They were terrible in the UK. They rusted and fell apart. I'm sure the weather's better in Australia, but I'm sure that was something that plagued even the Australians. How did the Falcon fare? Did it fare any better in terms of rust resistance compared to the Cortina? That would be interesting to know. Going back to the text, it starts by saying, Ford Falcon 500 sedan, it never felt better. It goes on to tell us in road handling, performance and driver comfort, Ford Falcon 500 has earned a reputation over the years as a great Australian road car. Now Falcon 500 has a suspension that you'll feel in city traffic, on the freeway, over country roads. You'll feel the controlled, easy handling that comes from a suspension that's ride engineered, with front and rear stabiliser bars matched with steel belt radials, wide track and long wheelbase. But that's not all. Inside you'll feel the comfort of contoured reclining front bucket seats and a relaxed position that helps you feel comfortable and relaxed during long periods. Behind the wheel, you'll find many other features that will help make you feel good in Falcon 2, such as perforated vinyl seat upholstery, loop pile carpet and an AM push button radio with lockdown aerial. Drive it yourself soon and see. And it gives you the Falcon 500 sedan standard features, and you'll notice standard is that 3.3 litre cross-floor 6-cylinder. So the yellow example shown with that 4.1 was obviously an optional 4.1 litre unit. Again, I'm not going to read all the text on these, but of course you can pause it any time if you don't want to read the full thing. And then that is the rest of the features for this particular Falcon 500 standard equipment. There is of course the wagon versions or estate versions of the 500 as well. In fact, it's showing the Ford Falcon 500 and Fairmont wagons. Like I say, I think it's more A little bit more luxury in the Fairmont one. So let's just zoom in on the main image. And you can see this particular example is the Fairmont. You can see the rectangular headlights up front there. Again, this one's badged 4.1. This one looks like it's going to be a Falcon. Let's see if we can zoom in on some of the badging. You can just about make out Falcon 500 on the back there. Just trying to read the front wing badge on there. It looks like a 4.9 actually, this one. And yes, there you go, Ford Falcon 500 wagon with the optional 4.9 litre V8 and rear facing third seat, available at extra cost. So it describes them as big wagons loaded with comfort and features. Falcon 500 and Fairmont wagons are year-round propositions for shopping, family trips or holidays. Both treat you to similar comfort features of their respective sedans, with the added advantage of a larger load space. Fairmont wagon has two other big loading advantages: a dual action tailgate which opens like a door or lowers like a conventional tailgate, and a chrome finish roof rack. The dual action tailgate is also available at extra costs on the Falcon 500 wagon. So there you go, dual action tailgate's really nothing new. A folding rear facing third seat in the load area is available at extra costs on all Falcon wagons. Falcon 500 wagon and Fairmont wagon both had engines that deliver great performance. The standard engine in the Falcon 500 wagon is a 3.3 litre 6, while Fairmont wagon has the 4.1 litre 6. Although obviously you can get that 4.1 or even larger in the Falcon as well. So equipment levels for the wagons are as such. Again, I'm not going to read it all out, but certainly if you wanted to, you could pause the screen and read it for yourself. I'll just move the screen further down. And then it moves on to the Fairmont wagons, which it says, as for the Falcon 500 wagon, but with these upgraded features. So like I say, the Fairmont is a bit more, it's luxury, maybe possibly taking it a little bit far, but certainly a bit more upmarket than the Falcons. And again, it confirms that the Fairmont gets the 4.1 as standard. Little extra features like that chrome finish roof rack, which it looks like the Falcon didn't get as standard. And then a bit of a look how that tailgate works, a bit like a truck. And you've got those rear facing seats. And then as we move on, these are probably the models that everyone really wanted. The Falcon and Fairmont hardtop versions, 2 doors. I'm wondering maybe this is why they didn't do the Capri. Obviously these are way bigger than the Capri, but sort of like similar sort of market I would imagine. Anyway, let's zoom in a little bit. Starts with the Falcon GS hardtop. Style on the bold side. If your style is on the bold side, Falcon GS spells it out in striking, spirited way of travelling. And listed below is what makes Falcon GS hardtop the bold one of the breed. Certainly it looks striking in this particular shade of yellow. Anyone know what shade of yellow this is called? Bit interesting to know. We've certainly got these twin headlights, twin round headlights, bit of a scoop there for the bonnet there. Certainly looks very sporting indeed. It tells us, this is a Ford Falcon GS hardtop, which is pretty obvious, but this is normally where the UK brochure would actually tell you, what shade or what the colour name would be, but it doesn't here. The background, it says the car featured is a specially prepared racing car not available from the Ford Motor Company of Australia. Yes, sorry, you can't buy this one. Then it tells you the standard features, so a 4.1 is the standard equipment on this particular Falcon. 4-speed manual floor shift as well, touring suspension. All the sporty bits, bonnet scoops. It's what you really want, don't you? Moving on, it continues to give you some more of that standard equipment. Like I said, I'm not going to read it all, but you can pause it if you want to. as it continues as so. And that takes us to the Fairmont hardtop. So this is going to be a Fairmont, similar sort of idea. We've got these rectangular headlights on here instead though, and we don't have those sort of like scoops at the rear either on this one. I do think I prefer overall the Falcon, although the Fairmont is going to be the higher spec version. If we just go back to the Falcon, to remind us those twin round headlights, which I kind of like, I think I prefer. That's just a personal thing. Like I say, you don't get these little extra little scoops at the back either. Interior of the Fairmont does look nice though. I do like those seats and that material, that two-tone material being used there. It's telling us the optional 4-speed manual floor shift transmission available that is a reduced cost. So I guess the auto was your standard equipment for the Fairmont. Bit more luxury I guess, but you can get the manual if you wanted to save a bit of money. I think that might have been the nicer option. Let me know what you think. Let's have a look at the text. So, first class travel, sporting style. The Fairmont heritage of superbly appointed motoring, dramatically expressed in hardtop design. Smooth, powerful, a distinctive way to express good taste with flair in your driving style. Gives us a look at your standard equipment. It says, as for the Falcon GS hardtop, but with these upgraded features, like I said, standard it's your automatic on this particular one. Get sort of sportier road wheels as well. And it also gives you these extra features. You get an electric clock and a carpeted luggage compartments floor. Other things that was classed as luxury, really not that long ago really. And then we just move down. Another little bit of a look. It certainly is a nice looking car. I do like those alloy wheels, I must admit. And then I think quite strangely, it's an unusual way they've decided to show us the Falcon and Fairmont. It goes back to the Ford Fairmont sedan. Quietly rewarding, luxuriously satisfying. Going for that luxury thing again. And there it is. A little bit low key in this colour, and we've got a nice vinyl roof on this particular model just to show you. Ooh, it's a little bit nicer. It also tells us at the bottom, it's hard to read the script on the wing there, but this has got the optional 4.9 litre V8, so a bit of a sleeper really. That it doesn't look like it would be. Interior looks very nice as well with those seats. Another little image of this cricketer leaning against his Fairmont with that 4.9. So it tells us the Ford Fairmont has a distinguished all-round appearance that makes it recognisable in any business or social gathering. A highly appointed car with power, strength and road car ride to give you controlled handling both off and on the highway. Among the many standard features in the Fairmont, you'll find beautifully contoured reclining front bucket seats upholstered in soft grain vinyls, colour keyed cut pile carpet, sports console and 3-speed T-bar auto transmission, front and rear outboard inertia reel seat belts, intermittent windscreen wipers, electric rear window demister. I'm surprised they're always using vinyl seats, because I never particularly like vinyl seats in the UK, and Australia is much warmer, so I don't know how you guys manage with reclining with vinyl seats. Maybe let me know in the comments if they are as horrendous as they sound. Moving down, standard equipment as for the Falcon 500 sedan, but with these upgraded features. So we get it as a standard with that 4.1, although obviously the person in the image there has upgraded that to a 4.9. Auto transmission seems to be standard on the Fairmont as well. And then a continuation of the equipment with those added features not standard on the Falcon 500. Electric clock seems to be a bit of a fancy feature back then by the looks of it, as well as a carpeted luggage compartment floor. And then we get the car that was actually featured on the front cover, so certainly a car you certainly aspired to own, the Ford Fairmont GXL, the Australian sports sedan in European tradition. I'm not sure what it means by that, in the European tradition, because certainly we weren't using engine sizes like this in Europe. Lovely looking car in red though, I must admit, and like I said, those alloy wheels being used again look really good. Let's just have a look, see what it tells us about this particular example. Yeah, they've optioned it again with the 4.9 V8 extra cost option. Let's see if we can see the badging. There is the 4.9 badge. Like I say, in European tradition, I'm not sure what it means. We certainly weren't using 4.9 litre V8s in Europe at the time, that's for sure. A little bit of a look at the rear as well. Fabulous looking cars. I particularly like them in this red for the GXL. And of course it's a 4-door as well, so practicality as well as sporting looks. So it tells us the Fairmont GXL has the performance, handling and many of the comfort features you'd expect from a European style sports sedan. With a major difference, Fairmont GXL is designed and built in Australia for Australian conditions. From start to finish, the Fairmont GXL is a driver's car, equipped with a powerful 4.1 litre cross-flow 6-cylinder engine, T-bar auto transmission, power steering, 4-wheel power disc brakes, touring suspension, limited slip differential, steel belt radial tyres, alloy sports road wheels and quartz halogen headlights. Pretty nice for the time. And here are those standard equipments. Nice things like bonnet scoops, always make you look like you're driving something a little bit fast. And really I should mention the 4-wheel power disc brakes. They must have certainly felt nice after the terrible brakes on your Cortina when you stuck a big engine in it. Now, like the Escort that we looked at a couple of weeks ago, there was also a Sundowner version of the Falcon. There it is. I think it particularly looks really nice in black with those yellow, very 70s graphics, which I can only approve of. Next to it is actually a Ford Transit, which everyone in Europe will be very familiar with these very unusual wheels on the Transit. So I did a Sundowner Transit as well, and of course at the end there, looking really small in comparison, is of course that Escort Sundowner, which we looked at a couple of weeks ago. And here is a little bit of a more 70s-ish image really. Look at that moustache. I love the graphics, very 70s, and the back graphic as well. That little bit of a decal on the back, looking very interesting. Sundowner. Interesting, no round window. We didn't get a round window on the back like we did with the Escort though. Interesting, these vans actually came with that 4.1 litre 6-cylinder. Even though it's a Falcon, it's still showing the standard one is a 4.1. That's interesting. I do like this Sundowner group of vehicles, I must admit. And other things like bonnet scoops and that. I don't know. I just like these, although I don't know if a few of the Australian viewers give them a certain comment that I can't mention really now, but yeah. A certain time that these vans would have been super cool, and I think that coolness is still there really. And just going off track a little bit, the Transits came with a 4.1 as well, so they must have sounded really nice. Oh, what's this vehicle coming? Oh, it's a Transit. Certainly didn't get 4.1s in Europe. So that is the range anyway for the Falcons and the Fairmonts, and then it gives these nice little image which we might as well have a quick look at of some of the optional extras, very period 70s optional extras. Things like houndstooth cloth seat upholstery, which is surely that was worth optioning in an Australian climate. Must have been so much nicer. And nice sports alloy wheels were an option. Power operated windows, and look at those gauges, how 70s are they. The GS Rally Pack option. Instrumentation, very nice. Tinted band laminated windscreen and that 3-bar T-bar auto transmission. Integrated air conditioning, a necessity in Australia I would say, and styled right hand remote control exterior rear view mirror. 70s, very much a time when they just used to throw it on the driver's side and kind of like forget about the passenger mirror. Lots of different options you could have for the full range, which is interesting. You could really spec them up well. We don't have time to go through it all, but I'll just zoom in on a couple. These sorts of heavy duty equipment packages sounded really interesting, like Outback Pack, heavy duty suspension, so you could really upgrade them for, you know, if you was travelling a little bit out back, I guess. So engines and transmission options are what it's all about, I think, with these cars. So we can have a 3.3, a 4.1, both 6 cylinders. We can upgrade to that 4.9 litre V8. And then there's something it didn't really mention in the brochure. It certainly didn't really show any vehicle with it on, but the GT Power Pack option. So you can get even with even bigger engine, a 5.8 litre 4-barrel V8. You can option that with a 4-speed manual floor shift if you wanted. So that's certainly an interesting one. And at the bottom here we've got the 3.3 litre with a 3280cc engine. And then the rest are exactly what they tell you. 4.1 litre 6-cylinder, a 4.9 litre 8-cylinder, and of course that 5.8 litre V8, which is certainly an interesting one. And anyone who remembers them 5.8 V8s, let me know if you had any experience. Do they sound quite as meaty as they really sound there? Anyway, that really takes us to the end of this Falcon and Fairmont look, and we get a nice little image there at the end as well. I guess, I mean, the video's getting a bit long, but I should also mention these, really, shouldn't I? The Ford Falcon and Falcon 500 utes and vans, these pickups, or utes as they call them in Australia. Interesting vehicles, and the van versions, a bit like how you can get an Escort van, they were a Falcon van you could get as well. So a big range, weren't they, for Falcons in the 70s? Very interesting. You think these are big cars, but of course you can get even bigger if you wanted to. Your Ford Fairlane, very nice looking car, very much moving on to very much American looks there, aren't we? This is Australia's #1 prestige car in a little star. Top selling prestigious car according to ADAPS, whatever that is. Australian viewers, help me out there. But yeah, there we go. Something else we could possibly look at if there is enough interest. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today's episode. We should wrap it up there. If you enjoyed the episode, please do like and subscribe. That helps the channel immensely. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for all the comments. Really like reading them. I read every one. There's some real interesting stuff that people post on there. Thank you. Have a great weekend. All the best, and goodbye.